Welcome to Plus One Forward, the podcast powered by the Apocalypse, where we talk about tabletop role-playing games using or inspired by the Apocalypse engine. I'm your MC Rich, and I'm joined by my guest, David Kizzia of Monkeyfun Studios. Hey Dave, welcome to the show.
Hello Rich, how are you?
Great, I'm great. Thanks for coming on. Now, I'm curious, how long have you been playing PbtA games, and what was your gateway?
Well, I started playing role-playing games back in probably junior high school, I think.
Okay.
And I actually was one of those people that didn't start with D&D, which is usually the gateway for most folks. I was more into the variants such as Boot Hill and Gangbusters, Star Frontiers. I went through my Vampire the Masquerade phase until the Guyliner just didn't suit me anymore. But Apocalypse World was the gateway for what we decided to do. Spirit of 77 was a situation where we knew what the premise was going to be first, that we wanted to focus on the 1970s pop culture milieu, and then tried to find the right fit for the game itself, basically find the right system. And we toyed with Fate, we toyed with Savage Worlds, but the played by the Apocalypse method seemed to work best for what we wanted in terms of the playability in the genre.
Gotcha. Now, which of the PbtA games did you play that kind of locked it in for you that maybe Spirit of 77 was the way to go?
It was basically Apocalypse World, and the way we had written it was myself and Bob Richardson. Bob was the mechanics expert, and I was doing a lot of the writing of the background and some of the concepts overall. So he was the one who proposed that we started using Apocalypse World as a basis. And so he introduced it to me, and then we were able to realize that that was what we were looking for.
So I have to ask, who ran the Apocalypse World game?
It was Bob.
Why don't we jump in and read a sitch, okay, Dave?
Sure.
Read a sitch. All right, now, Dave, I'm curious. I know that Spirit of 77, which a game I haven't played yet, when I look on Drive-Thru RPG, there's more than just the game. You've got adventures. Now, how do you design adventure for a game where the Apocalypse engine is really about playing to find out and building the world around PCs? How do you make that happen?
The way we worked our adventures was providing as many options as possible for what we call the DJ. That's how we call the MC within the Spirit of 77 system. So the DJ can be able to pivot with how the players themselves are wanting the overall fiction to develop.
Okay.
One of the things that we stress within our written adventures is starting in media res, basically starting with what we call a fuel injection. So it makes the action start immediately, posing the questions to the players and allowing them to give the DJ enough of a lead on where the narrative should go. So for each front that we have, and for each particular NPC that's listed, we provide different types of options that could be used for any particular adventure. So an adventure could be more zany, could be more lighthearted, or it could be more gritty. It could be more sci-fi based. It really depends on how the table develops the fiction within the game.
Oh, great. Like, they could take it almost anywhere. How do you support that? Do you just have certain way stations that are part of the setting, or is there a general loose plot and a timeline? How do you set that up?
It's a general plot. A good example of that is the adventure Women's Prison of the Apes.
Okay.
And the fuel injection for Women's Prison of the Apes starts very simply is that, what did you guys do to get yourselves into prison? Okay, and it basically starts the action really quickly. And the players have the option of going multiple ways once they are presented with the offer of breaking into a prison. It's basically a reverse heist scenario where they need to break into a prison to remove a senator's daughter. So one of the things that is given is that every particular front has, as I said, multiple options, but they also have what we call a gear shift, which allows the tension to develop, or the overall plot line develop for that particular front. So that way the DJ can say, okay, at this particular point, this front is at this level, while this other front's at another level, and to be able to gauge how the players are going.
Now, how did you guys come into that? Is that generally something that you mapped over, or were there parts of Apocalypse Engine that forced you to come up with this structure for an adventure?
It was partially that we knew for example, it's a little more complicated for something that's a more reality-based than, say, something like Apocalypse World or something like Monster Hearts, in the fact that when you say this is taking place within a city, more often than not, people have an idea of what the city is going to look like. They expect there to be potentially a police force. They expect there may be some public transportation. And since we're talking about the 70s, and most people apply it to New York, although it can be any city, they may say that there is like mass transit of like a subway system.
Sure.
We provide the guidelines, but we always say that the players are the ones who choose what the city itself looks like. So even though we say, okay, here are some options that you may want for different clubs or different types of districts within the city, the players themselves really guide the DJ to where they go.
Awesome. Which of the adventures is your favorite, Dave?
That's an interesting question. Wow, now I really got to think of it. It's like, say, which child do you love the most?
I know, right? I ask all the tough questions here.
I think probably Jurassic Parking Lot. And Jurassic Parking Lot as an adventure had started. Basically, we wanted to have a game that allowed people to do Land of the Lost, because that's something I remembered very clearly in the 70s. What I really like about that particular adventure is that it really has such an open-ended environment to it, to where I've seen people make it very much like Land of the Lost, and other times I've seen it turn into like a Lord of the Flies scenario, to where it gets very gritty. And I love them both, but I never know how players are going to do it. I would also say, as a second to that, probably the Women's Prison of the Apes, because that's when I've seen so many different examples of player creativity that, I never know what people are going to be bringing to the table for that particular game.
We've talked a lot about Spirit of 77. We talked around it. Let's talk about it specifically. You want to open your brain and actually talk about Spirit of 77 directly?
Sure.
Open your brain.
So the way we normally describe it is a high-octane, action-based RPG set in the world of 1970s pop culture. But that's kind of wordy. The way I usually say what the game's all about is it allows you to play the $6 million man driving the General Lee off to go fight the Warriors.
Why'd you pick that?
It was something Bob and I were fans of already. We were the kind of guys that we would, when we were playing Vampire, as example, we created characters that were all in a band. And we would spend more time or bickering or role-playing the aspects of being in a band as opposed to the normal plot lines. And I am a big fan of 70s music. Bob has seen every episode of the Rockford Files. We have a love of 70s cop shows and the music, and it really was one of those things that we wrote what we knew and what we really felt was in our wheelhouse at the time.
Cool. Now tell me about Spirit of 77. Mm-hmm. What are the mechanics in this game that are different from Apocalypse World?
So one of the things that we did is that a normal character has not just, say, like a class like in Dungeon World, they may say you are the elf or you are the wizard or something like that. We have what's called a role, which is what you do, and then we also have the addition of a story, which is your background. So a good example of that is that if you've probably seen the movie Rocky. Mm-hmm. The big confrontation between Rocky Balboa and Apollo Creed, in Spirit of 77 terms, they would both be known as tough guys. Basically, that's what they do. Now, Apollo Creed is a professional fighter. He's an athlete, so he would be known as a all-star tough guy. And because he's an all-star, his story is as an all-star, he would have different moves available to him than Rocky would have. Rocky came from the streets. He basically was a guy from the neighborhood, so he would be what we call one bad mother tough guy, who would have moves associated with that. So between your story and your role, you have a lot more variance to the types of moves available and allows people to be much more customized in their characters.
Gotcha. And now, how many total roles are there in the base game?
There's 7. And we also have the book Wide World of 77, which brings in additional stories and roles. And we try to include something new with every one of our adventures. For instance, one of our double feature adventures includes what's called the Escape Artist, because I remember very clearly the days of David Copperfield when he was just doing like Kodak commercials, Doug Henning, Harry Blackstone. So we wanted to make sure everybody was getting to see as much of the 70s genre as possible.
What are some of the other mechanics that you've tweaked for Spirit of 77?
One of the things we wanted to try to minimize was the inclusion of a lot of +1 modifiers to basically allow people to focus on the story and allow people to not have to worry about the math mechanics, to basically be able to move forward. So we incorporated what we call something extra, and it was something that had been based off of D&D's advantage system, where for certain moves, instead of it being like a +1 modifier, you're rolling with something extra where you roll 3 dice and then you pick the best of 2. And that actually not only makes it a little bit easier for people to just keep focused on the play, but everybody loves dice, and so it keeps the momentum going of the overall gameplay.
You're saying that you roll 3d6 sometimes and just choose the best 2?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. That's new. I haven't heard that one. All right.
Right. And also it's a modifier that when you've experienced quite a bit of damage, then you're rolling with something less, which basically is rolling 3 dice and then choosing the less of the 2 dice.
Ugh.
Right.
Oh, that sounds terrible.
That's why you don't ever want to be rolling with something less.
All right.
Yeah, but people like it because, as I said, it makes or allows people to stay more immersed in their action and the overall narrative in the fiction, as opposed to having to take a step back and do the whole number crunching, which, granted, isn't a lot, but it's enough to where we want to keep people focused and be entertained on what they're doing at that time.
So I'm clear. Something extra and something less, is that a damage mechanic, the something less, or is there damage and something less, which is where you roll 3d6 and take the worst 2?
It's a condition of when you're halfway through what we call your harm level. So it's basically the fact that you're limping along with a crutch and a cast saying, okay, I'm not going to be as good as what I can do, so I'll be rolling with something less.
Gotcha.
For certain particular roles, such as what we call the vigilante, when they're using a gun, they get to use something extra.
Gotcha. So you've taken away +1 forward for the rolling an extra die.
Not for everything, but it is something for more active situations that it is included.
Gotcha. Okay. And the rules kind of delineate which one is going to be a something extra versus a +1 forward?
Yes.
All right. I imagine with all these stories and rolls and supplements, you've probably got a ton of moves that you've created. I want to know, what is your favorite move and why?
So that's a 3-part question.
I'm afraid like it is a 2-part, but okay.
So when you're talking game mechanics, we have a role that's called the honey pot. And the honey pot is basically like the Farrah Fawcett's, I hate to say this, but like the Ron Jeremy's when he was a lot younger and thinner. Warren Beatty is an example we write in the book. Basically the pretty people. And the honeypots have a move called less is more. And less is more is basically when you take your shirt off or basically, show your hairy chest or something like that, you actually get +1 armor. Because that was a trope that we saw in 70s pop culture, is that always the hero takes his shirt off and is off, right before he goes into these dangerous things. And for whatever reason, he can take, a whole world of damage that he's not wearing a shirt. Why is that possible? Well, it's possible because he's using the move less is more. From a game creator perspective, one of my favorite move would probably be something we called Superfly. Superfly was created basically, Bob had originally created a move which was originally called at the time Immaculate, which basically meant at any given time, no matter what damage you've taken, no matter what explosion you've been through, you always looked good at every single time. And I had to admit, I was kind of lukewarm about it at the time. And then we, for whatever reason, renamed it Superfly, because then it was like, oh, that's perfect, because then it became one of my favorite moves, because now you're always looking Superfly. And all that changed was the name and how it was being presented, but it absolutely changed the perspective on how the move would work and how it would feel as part of the game. The last favorite move, I would say, was something that actually came up during some of our play testing. One of our stories is being a former vet, being that you were once in Vietnam or something like that. And we were playing at a convention here in Los Angeles. And in the middle of it, the player that was playing the character that was a former vet shouted out at the top of his lungs, "We leave no man left behind!" And at that moment, Bob and I looked at one another and said, "Oh, well, that's got to be a move," because we realized that was something that he felt he had to do at that time, which was to go save another player, just because, in the Army, you don't leave a man behind. So it's one of those things that I love, developed as part of the play testing, as basically as part of the development for the game. So all three of those moves are very near and dear to me.
Nice. Yeah, that feels very Braddock/Rambo-esque, so good call. Although those are both 80s, but still. 77's close, right? It's close.
Sure.
We'll squint and pretend. Great. That is cool. All right. You've got me pretty excited to give Spirit of 77 a shot. You mind if we maybe act under fire and get this thing a whirl?
Sure, absolutely.
It is time to act under fire.
So I understand that you're going to play Plussy Jones, is that right?
Plussy Jones is who I want to play in Spirit of 77, Dave.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about Plussy Jones, why don't you? What does Plussy Jones do?
I think Plussy Jones works, he's a mechanic down at the shop, and he mostly fixes old Camaros. That's his specialty.
Okay. So that would make him, in Spirit of 77 parlance, he'd be what we call a grease monkey, which basically is exactly that. He would be repairing. He has a benefit to being able to fix things on the fly and being able to ramp them up to being, supercharged cars. So you're working, what's the name of your garage?
Name of the garage. Oh, man, that's a great question. Chico's.
Oh, Chico's Garage. There you go. So Chico, of course, he purchased the garage, from the old man Robertson, who owned it before, and he has been in, the what we call the Bells area, which is the Lower East Side of the city. And you're working there, you're working the late shift, and all of a sudden a car pulls up in front where you can see that it's like a 1968. Let's say it's a Corvette, because there's a big sign that says Corvettes are specialties right there on the marquee, and you can see that it's filled with bullet holes. Right?
Okay.
There's bullet holes across the glass, bullet holes along the sides, and on the side of it you can see painted the Death Eaters right there along the side of it. And of course, the Death Eaters is one of the major bopper gangs within the city. A guy falls out. He's holding on to his arm, and he's walking over to you, and he says, "Hey, buddy, you guys still open?" What do you do?
I look him over and the car, and I don't know if we're open for you, man.
Hey, I got $1,000 that says you might be open for me. You still interested?
Yeah, buddy, I think we are open right now. Why don't you let me pull that car in for you?
All right, but don't look in the back, all right? Don't look in the trunk. That's none of your business. Because if I see that you open up in the back, we're going to have a problem, my friend. And he lifts up his shirt, and you can see that he's got a gun on him. Okay,
but he's cradling his arm. Like, has he been shot, or maybe he busted up his arm? What do I see?
Yeah, he's bloodied up. He looks like he's definitely been grazed alongside his arm. So what do you do now? All right, so how are you going to pull the car up?
I'll just hop around and get into the driver's side and pull it up.
Okay, so you're going to drive the sucker up.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you get inside, you can see the glass that's everywhere in the front, and you can definitely see that this car is being driven by a screwdriver that's been shoved into the steering column. Now he watches you pull up, and he goes, "Now don't ask any questions. I'm going to be back in 30 minutes. I got to go make a phone call." And he hustles down to the street, down to the phone booth, because in the 70s there is, no cell phones or anything like that.
That's right. Right.
So what do you do? So now you're looking at the car, and you can see that it's got bullet holes everywhere on it.
I'm popping that trunk. I got to know if he's got somebody back there.
Okay. So when you pop open the trunk, you see in the back that the entire thing is filled with stacks of $100 bills that have been taped over, basically, saran wrapped in there. You have no idea where they come from, but they're all covered with a fine mist of blood spots across it. So what do you do?
Oh, wow. Is anybody else seeing this? I'm working the shift all by myself here. I just want to make sure. Has anybody else caught eye of this?
Is there anybody else in there?
Well, and we were almost closed. I mean, I was shutting the place down.
Sure. Would Chico let you stay close up for the night?
I don't know why Chico wouldn't. I mean, I've never stolen anything from Chico.
So, by the way, what does Chico, I know that Chico has a dog that he usually uses as his security system. What's the name of the dog?
Oh, yeah. That dog's name is Snickers.
Okay. So Snickers, of course, he's called that because he's, brown, and on his belly he's actually got a white stripe. So he looks like a Snickers bar, of course.
Right.
So he comes up and he's like sniffing at it, and he's like, and he's looking at you, trying to figure out what exactly you've brought into the garage. So what do you do?
I look down at Snickers and I say, I was expecting a dead body, Snickers.
So he's barking. He's like, barking at the back of the car, the back seat.
Oh, hell. Well, I gotta check out the back seat then. Is there something else back there?
Okay. So what normally happens for this particular scenario is that we're going to have you actually use one of the basic moves of the game, which is called scoping the scene.
Okay.
Scoping the scene is when you're actually using a detail observation or inspection as opposed to just looking around. For instance, looking around your apartment, I can see that you've got stuff up on your walls, what have you, but I don't necessarily know what's in your drawers of your desk or anything like that.
Sure,
that's actually scoping the scene. And that's actually based off of the move or the stat which we call your brains. So roll plus your brains right now, and we'll say that your brains right now is just a 1. So go for it.
Okay. Yeah, well, a lot of my stats are +1, so that's perfect. All right, here we go. So I'm regular 2d6. We're not rolling with something extra, right?
Right.
Okay. 4 + 2 and 1 is a 7.
So that's a partial success. So
yeah.
You look in the back and you can see that there is a handgun in there as well, and you can tell that the handgun has been fired, and you realize that this is something that looks like it would probably be a police issue weapon. Now, because it's a partial success meaning a success with a cost. So as you're holding this gun in your hand, you hear, coming up on the driveway into the garage, you hear a car pulling up, and it looks like it's a police cruiser. What do you do?
Well, I'm holding by the trigger guard, right? Because I'm not stupid enough to grab it around the handle.
Sure.
I just drop it back down in the back seat, and I'll walk around and close the trunk and walk out towards the cops.
Okay. So cop comes up, and he's looking at you, and he says, "How you doing, Plussy? Haven't talked to you in a while."
Hey, officer, good to see you. I was just shutting everything down here. Chico's basically closed.
Yeah, I saw the light on. I didn't understand, I thought you guys, closed a little earlier. Hey, I hate to ask you, but we were just checking around. We know that there was some trouble down at the First National Bank. We haven't had, we know that something's happened down there, but, we can't seem to find, any trouble. The alarms went off, but everything was locked up tight. So you haven't happened to see or hear anything weird, on the street tonight, have you?
Think about Death Eater. Are they the kind of guys that if this guy goes up the river, they're going to come after me? These Death Eaters?
Are you asking the cop or are you asking me?
I'm sorry. I'm asking you. I just want to know what Plussy knows about the Death Eaters.
Oh, well, the Death Eaters, are members of one of the local bopper gangs that works occasionally for the local crime syndicate, the Malachis. The Malachis, of course, have their finger in every pie of the underworld here in the city. So that if they're involved, that it's a good bet that the Malachi family might be involved as well. But it's very weird. I mean, as I said, the cop pointed out that nothing was stolen. So take that any way you like. There was no theft of the bank. Just pointing that out.
Wow, it's a puzzler.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was just a guy who brought in a car right at the last minute and asked me to take a look at it. It was running a little weird, so I thought I'd do him a favor, that's all. Now, you're saying there was some kind of trouble. I haven't heard about any trouble. Why would they not take any? Everything's locked up tight, I guess. Not a big deal, right? Everybody's accounted for?
As far as we could tell, place is tighter than a drum. You wouldn't be hiding anything from me, Plussy, would you?
I'm not hiding anything from you, officer.
Okay, so what we're going to do is that basically you're going to try to get what you want, or actually you're trying to do what's called keeping your cool. So you're going to roll 2d6 plus your smooth, which is a 1. So
okay, all
you're
right.
trying to keep your cool in front of this cop.
Yeah, I don't want to roll on him. All right, I've rolled a 7 plus 1 and 8.
He's looking around and he's looking over at Snickers, who Snickers is still sniffing at the car, at the back seat of the car. He's saying, all right, we'll check up on you later. So don't think I got any questions for you, Plussy, but if you see anything, you give us a call, all right? You have a good night, all right?
Have a good night. Yeah, you bet.
So
Thanks for coming by.
So he tips his hat, and he hops back in the police car and backs out and cruises on down the street. Now, once you see him take off, what do you do?
I'm going to head back to the trunk and open it back up again. Are there any... Is it completely sealed? You said it was covered with plastic, right? Is this some kind of tarp?
Like a saran wrap. Basically, the bricks of money that banks, often handle.
Huh. A bunch of saran wrap? Like a bunch of bricks? Like if one or two of these bricks weren't there anymore, how obvious would it be?
I don't know. How much of it are you considering taking?
If there are 20 bricks and 3 bricks are not there, I think that would probably look the same.
All right. So you take out a brick and you're looking at it. So, all right. So you've taken out actually 3 bricks. So you're looking at the bricks. What are you doing with them?
I'll go throw them in. I'll throw them in a barrel. Right? We've got a couple barrels. Like we've got one barrel that we use where we'll dip a tire into it, right? Get it all wet, and then we can see where holes come out. So I'll just drop them in that barrel. Okay.
So while you're dropping it in, you hear or you hear the phone ringing, in the office of Chico's garage. What do you do?
Run and close the trunk, and then I'll run try to get to the phone. It's the 70s, so it's not like there's an answering machine to pick up. I got 5 or 6 rings.
Yes, you do. All right. So you pick up the phone. All right. How do you answer the phone? Just checking.
Chico's garage. This is Plussy.
Plussy, this is Chico. Have you locked up already? Have you closed the door?
No. A guy brought in a Corvette at the last minute. Offered us a little extra.
Oh, God. It wasn't one of the Death Eaters, was it?
Actually, yeah, it was.
Man, you got to get out of there. I hear that they ripped off one of the casinos of the Malachis, one of the underground casinos on the street. Dude, you got to get out of there, because if they find you're connected with it, both the Malachis and the Death Eaters are going to try to grease you, man.
Oh, hell, man. Okay, yeah. Thanks, Chico. I'm going to get out.
Take Snickers with you, because that's my favorite dog, man.
Oh, yeah. I got him. I'm going to get out of here, man.
All right. Talk to you later. He hangs up. Now Snickers is looking out the garage door. He's got his head back, twisting it back and forth as if he's staring out, puzzled.
Oh, sweet. Well, I reach over and I scoop up Snickers. He's kind of heavy. Mm-hmm. And I'll do that little one eye out the side, lean over type deal to look out.
Okay. So the guy is walking back from the phone booth that he was making a call, and you can see that there's another car coming up alongside him, and he's having a little powwow with them, and they also have alongside it painted the Death Eaters as well. So it looks like he's called for a reinforcement of some sort.
Oh, wow.
What do you do?
This is terrible. Okay, what was wrong with the car?
Well, the bullet holes was probably going to make it drive a little slower.
Yeah, all right. I'm going to get to work on the car.
Okay.
Right quick and see if I can patch it up enough to where these guys will just go.
Okay, so roll some dice on this one.
All right.
Plus brains to work on the car.
Plus brains. All right. That was, again, a 1, so I just rolled an 11, sir.
Okay, so you get a whole bowl, the toothpaste that you're using to fix up the bullet holes, and then, taking taking one of the Sharpie markers to cover it up real quick because you realize you don't have time to really set this with Bondo, but you're trying to cover it up so that way at least from a distance, you can see that there's no holes or any scratches, and you make it look fantastic. You can see that that it looks absolutely perfectly shiny. So the two Death Eaters are coming up, and they're looking at you, and they're saying, the one that you already talked to and said, "See, I told you, Torino, there's no problem at all." And Torino, who looks like he's probably the other guy's boss, is definitely giving you the once over twice. And he's checking you out and goes, "Hey, so where's Chico tonight?" What do you say?
Oh, Chico's coming back in a little bit. He was headed out to the store. We're going to do a little bit of inventory tonight. Yeah. So he'll be back any minute now. You want to stick around for him? I've got this all fixed up.
He's circling around the car. Yeah, you do good work, Plussy. You do real good work. So, what do you think of the idea of possibly, I don't know, if we brought you other cars, whether or not you could do such good work on them as well?
Tonight?
Maybe.
We got inventory tonight, but if you need future work, yeah, man, we can.
No, not we. Not we. I want you. You, I think, need to be our man, Plussy.
Yeah. Sure, that sounds great.
But we got to know that we can trust you, Plussy, because we wouldn't want anything to happen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. You can trust me. I'm just a grease monkey, man.
So he reaches down and he's petting Snickers. Yeah, because, sometimes when problems happen, you never know who could get hurt in the crossfire,
Yeah, I know.
You're a dog lover, aren't you?
I am.
Yeah.
That's Chico's dog, man. Snickers means a lot to him.
Yeah, Chico's a good guy. Wouldn't want anything to happen to him either. All right, so let me see your wallet.
All right. I'll reach into my back pocket. It's in my... I'm wearing coveralls, right? I'm a grease monkey.
Right.
So reach inside the coveralls, zip it down a little bit, reach in. Yeah, here you go, man. It's just got my license and...
Yeah, so he takes a look at that license. Yeah, that's your license, all right. Yeah, we know that area of town. It's a good area. Well, we'll be talking to you real soon, Plussy. All right, back the car up. All right, the guy hops in and he throws you the Chicago roll of the $1,000, and it starts it up and it revs up. It's a 396 engine, so it's definitely loud. He goes, "We're definitely going to keep an eye on you, Plussy. Expect us tomorrow, as a matter of fact, at closing time. We got a job for you to take care of for us."
All right. I'm your man.
All right, and they pull out. We'll cut right here, right now, just to...
Oh, yeah. That was good to cut. That was good. Woo! All right. Well, Dave, thanks for coming on Plus One Forward and telling me a little bit about Spirit of 77. This is really great, man.
Absolutely. Oh, and I just wanted to make one more announcement. We just recently released a new adventure on Drive-Thru RPG, which is called Masterpiece 77. This is a little different than what we've done before. This uses the Spirit of 77 system, but we did this for LA Convention Strategicon earlier this year, and it's based off of Shakespeare characters. So Masterpiece 77 takes all these characters that survived the Shakespeare plays and put them into Spirit of 77 rules. For instance, I don't know how much of Shakespeare you know, but Falstaff is a honeypot within the system. Players actually have the ability to play Lady Macbeth, who's a vigilante in this. And it takes everybody back to Castle Elsinore from Hamlet a year after the death of the ruling family to basically join King Fortinbras in the celebration of his reign, and all hell breaks loose. And so that's Masterpiece 77 available through Drive-Thru RPG.
Okay, that is perfect, man. Thanks again, Dave. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. That sounds spectacular.
Thank you, Rich. Appreciate you having me on.
Plus One Forward is a production of the Gauntlet community and Richard Rogers. You can find us on gauntlet-rpg.com or follow us on Twitter at GauntletRPG. The games mentioned on this show use the Apocalypse engine, which is a creation of Vincent and McGay Baker. The music for Plus One Forward is from the Savage Arl Hotbed CD Gomi Daiko. The songs used are Gomi Daiko Metal version and Process. You can find more amazing tunes by Savage Arl Hotbed on their website, savagearlhotbed.com.